Elevated Grapes Podcast.
Elevated Grapes Podcast.
With your host, Seth.
And
stylist, Rashi Bindra.
It's time to get started.
Let's talk fashion, shall we? Welcome to Elevated Grapes. I am your host, Sethi.
And I'm your co-host and stylist, Rashi Bindra. And this week, we have a very interesting and very awesome guest on our podcast. And he goes by Paul the Designer. And he is Paul the Designer of Avon Noir, or commonly known as...
I've actually heard it being called Avante.
Really?
So I don't know who's right.
Let's just stick to the French way, okay?
Call it whatever you want.
Welcome, Paul.
What's going on, guys? I appreciate you having me on this.
Actually, clarify that. Like, what do you call it? Do you what's the actual proper pronunciation, or what you intended it to be?
I call it Avon Noir. So I intended it to be that, but keep in mind though, I had to look it up a couple times and get Siri to say it. So I know I'm saying it right.
I love that Siri is the authority in this.
Oh, 100%. Even on Translate, look it up and put it in the French dialect, change the languages, right?
Are you one of those guys, Paul, that has your Siri or your Google or Alexa telling you, you say good morning and it does all this whole morning routine for you?
No, not even. It's funny, as much as everyone thinks I'm technologically advanced, I'm not. I got the newest stuff, but there's a certain amount of my day I like to control where I actually have to look up stuff and put that work in, right? I feel like everything at your fingertips is convenient, but at the same time it makes you lazy sometimes too,
Yeah, I mean, it's good to have it. It's good to have access to information. I mean, it's a lot different than before when, I don't know how old you, but back in the days when we were going to libraries and looking up encyclopedias, and then eventually you could look up in some of the encyclopedia information online. But now just everywhere you go, instant information, access to everything is just so instantaneous. It's incredible, but also scary.
No, definitely, 100%. No, so my mornings will kind of go I do the typical thing where I jump on my phone and I'm on Instagram for a little bit just to see what's kind of going on.
I think we're all guilty of that.
I intend to start my day at 8 o'clock, and then sometimes 9 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
Oh shit, I gotta get out.
Gotta stop strolling.
Yeah, it's pretty bad, But it's good though. I like having everything automated in the sense of when it comes to work. But certain things in the morning or schedules or routines, I'll just type it in with my phone. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Fair enough. So Rashi said, thank you for being on the show with us today. It's a pleasure to have you. Tell us a little bit about your business and your brand.
So I technically have two brands. So the first company that I started myself was called U.A.O.P Luggage. It's still running right now. So basically how I started was I started doing clothing for a little bit when I was 16 in high school. And then it turned into me doing luggage for cars. So I've always been passionate about cars since I was a little kid. So for me, I wanted to tie both things together. It just took a little bit of time for me to kind of figure out what products I wanted to tie together with the car. So I started doing luggage, and it's been going pretty well for me. It's been able to fund this new company that I'm starting. I just feel like I did a lot of really great things with my first company, and I'm still running it. But the Avon Noir brand is something that I put a lot more time into. I use the lessons that I learned from, my first company, right, to kind of perfect everything and to get a fresh start with something new. But, sort of the same business model, but just maybe a better execution of it.
So when you say a lot of lessons, oops, sorry. Go ahead, Rashi.
That's exactly what I was going to ask. So go for it.
It usually happens. Anyways, you can ask it. Go ahead.
So when you say you learned certain lessons with your first company and that's translated into your second company, can you share what some of those lessons are?
Oh, of course. So I feel like time management is a big thing for me as far as, because what happens is when you start a company, when it's something that's new and fresh, you don't really have clients right off the top, especially when you're trying to make a market for a certain product you're trying to make, right? So you kind of go through the learning process of how you're going to get your clients, what they're looking for. You start to research how much it costs to make your product, how much it actually costs to get your marketing done in the sense of what your customer acquisition price is. So you figure out all these things. So along the way, you have to balance. Like for me, the biggest thing was always to make a quality product. So I found that, if let's say the marketing wasn't the best or the presentation wasn't the best, the product kind of spoke for itself, right? I wanted that to be strong enough just in case, I lacked in certain areas because it was something completely new for me. So I had to pick up, most of these things that I'm talking about. I never wanted to sacrifice the quality of the product and the workmanship that goes into it, right? So there's certain things that I feel like I could have executed better, like the whole rollout of the product. Like, when I started the company, I didn't think it was going to be as successful as it turned out to be. I was being optimistic. I set really good expectations, but I also have, an optimistic sense of look of how stuff's really going to pan out. I kind of always sometimes think of the best case and worst case scenario, right? So just little things that I picked up. For me, it's just, I don't want to make the same mistake. So the biggest thing for me is just like, now I learned what it costs to make the product, what I learned, how to get my customers, but I just want the presentation to be better. There's a lot of things that I wanted to do with the first company, as far as like a nice promo to get it out where people know it's like word of mouth, right? So that's something I wanted to change second time around.
Who's asking the question, the follow-up question?
No, sorry. I think there was a delay on my side. My
Oh,
apologies.
no worries.
Yeah. So sorry about that. So learning lessons. So when you started the second company, the fall, was it a different line or a different brand? I'm asking this for the benefit of the listeners because I don't think we've actually talked about what products your businesses and your brands market.
So U.A.O.P Luggage, essentially what I do is I take inspiration from cars. So Ferrari, Lamborghini, Rolls Royce,
Right.
Porsche, etc. Anything high end. And what I do is I make custom luggage to match these cars. So luggage,
Nice, okay.
a lot of these owners of these vehicles, they go on rallies. So it's not like how it used to be before, where someone would buy a car and it'd be like a garage where you sit in the car, you take it out once every weekend. It's
Right.
the whole car world is dominated by a lot more younger entrepreneurs, right? So
Yes.
everyone's a little bit more flashy. Everyone likes to take the vehicle out, whether they daily drive the vehicle or whether they drive it just for personal use. But a lot of these guys like to meet up with other people because it's like a networking thing, right? So
Right.
what I was told when I was a kid is when you buy one of these cars, you kind of buy like a membership into a group of people
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
can who are successful, right?
It's like a network. It's like a network.
Of course, right? It's a little bit, like car people are different. They're just a different type of person. You know what I mean? Everyone kind of bonds over that whole experience of their cars. But I
Absolutely.
find like everyone gets along right off the top of it because they're so excited to either showcase their car or to see someone else's car. And because there's more younger entrepreneurs now that can afford these vehicles, they like to use them a lot more. So now they put together these rallies where they all kind of meet up on the weekend, either drive to a restaurant or drive to some sort of space where they can take pictures and just have fun, get the cars out, right? So I make luggage to basically match the interior or the exterior of the vehicle. So now a lot of rallies, people will kind of make teams. So for example, like, my favorite color is yellow, right? So let's say if I did enter the rally, I would enter as Team Yellow if I didn't have either of my brand, right? So then a lot of guys will theme, their whole car yellow to Rapid, or it's already spec from the factory that color, right? Or they might have a company or brand that they have, whether they're a lawyer or whether they're an entrepreneur as well, and they might tie that in with their car. So where I come in is I kind of take those elements and incorporate into like a bag, a duffel bag.
So basically all their interior matches with the bag as well. Usually, like as you mentioned, you usually see that in like their Lamborghinis or your Ferraris, like Bugatti. I think it does a lot of that. I think Land Rover even or Range Rover does some of that too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, correct. It's something now that like the marketplace. So I started 2010, like I started rolling the products out. So around that time, Lamborghini wasn't really doing much of that. It was more like travel luggage. So it kind of looked like the car, but it really didn't. It was just generic, like black, had the gold shield on it, and was that, right? And a lot of these companies were doing the same thing. So before, like, let's say about 20, 30 years ago, these vintage kind of cars, they used to do luggage for them, but it wasn't really themed to look like the car. It was more so to be like an external part, right, of the vehicle. So they might
Gotcha.
have done it to match the seat, but just the color of the seat, not the stitching of the seat, not add any emblems. They made it very low key. So if you look at luggage like 10, 15 years ago, it was very bland. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Hmm.
Unless we're talking like Louis Vuitton or Gucci or something like that, but just car luggage in general, right?
Right.
So for me, I kind of bridge the gap in the sense of I always thought if I ever am lucky enough to afford a Lamborghini, it'd be cool to kind of have an accessory to go with it.
Of
And
course.
I was, okay, well, a lot of these, like now that we're in a newer generation of people, it's kind of acceptable for men to walk around with bags. Like 10, 15 years
Yeah. Yeah.
ago,
Yeah. Yeah.
with like, have a man purse.
Yeah.
Um, but it's not even that. It's more like I did it more to make it look like a duffel bag, right? So it made it easier for my
Mm-hmm.
clients to kind of rock it as a fashion accessory, because a lot of I'm speaking for myself, but a lot of car guys are generally older. They're simple. They may get an extreme car, but their taste in clothing and stuff that's pretty simple. They're laid back, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
it's just something for them to transition into that space where they feel like, okay, well, I can get a bag. It's manly because it looks like my car, so no one's gonna kind of judge me, right? So that's how that whole idea kind of went hand in hand.
I was gonna ask you, like, is your clientele mostly like, are they fashion savvy, or are they more the car enthusiasts that just are always looking for accessories that'll kind of complement their vehicle?
Well, it's kind of divided now, right? So like I find that early on, a lot of clients that I approached, they were pretty fashion savvy. Like you get a mix of them, right? Like I said, there's a lot. It's dominated now by a lot of younger entrepreneurs and individuals, like myself, or like just some kids
Right.
that are like early 20s that are fortunate enough to be in a position to own a car like this, right? So
Yeah.
just naturally they already are in touch with what's kind of going on with the fashion world, right?
Of
But
course.
there is a significant amount of clients that are not fashion savvy. Like sometimes they often leave it to me to spec out their bag. So that whole process is just I take design cues from their car, more or less. But the
Mm-hmm.
odd time I'll add in my influence a bit on the design and say, hey, this might complement the way you dress, or your type of vibe, right?
So is every piece custom made that you put out, or do you have like a generic, almost quote unquote off the rack for certain types of vehicles, or like how does it work in terms of your process and product?
So everything is 100% custom. So what I did was I made a silhouette bag that we use.
Right.
So that bag essentially, I made it that way it could complement different cues from a lot of different cars.
Right.
So essentially, what happens is like the way I acquire my customer is I'm on Instagram a lot. So
Yeah.
I follow a lot of car guys, and this is
Yeah.
like a big secret that I give out. Everyone always asks me how I acquire my customer and how I've been so successful.
Yeah.
So it's two-part answer. I'll go on Instagram, and what I'll do is I'll look at different car groups, or I'll type in Lamborghini, and I'll see if someone's posting a picture of their car, who the owner is, if they have some sort of following on Instagram, or if they're like kind of loud on Instagram about owning these cars. Some guys are private; you wouldn't know they own
Yeah.
them,
Of
but some
course. Of
guys
course.
take pride in owning the car. So essentially, what happens is I'll see their car on Instagram, and what I'll do is I go on Photoshop. So the first thing I did when I started my business was, instead of making a bunch of different bags to kind of show people what they would look like, I figured a cost-effective measure would be to Photoshop it and just basically render it out where I can change it, add logos, add stitch patterns. And this took me a long time to do, to kind of get every vehicle on lock. Like I did Ferrari, Lamborghini, Bugatti, Porsche, Rolls Royce. So I spent a lot of time just setting it up that way. I can render a bag pretty quickly on the fly, and it would save me time later and money, right? So what
Of
I'll
course.
do is, let's say if you have a green Porsche, I'll go on your Instagram, look at your Porsche, take design cues from your car, and basically do a render. And I'll just send you a direct message with the bag already done, like in the form of a render. That way, you kind of open it and I'm like, oh wow, this looks exactly like my car.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
how I start a conversation with my clients. And then pretty often, like I nail it right off the top, because cars are my passion, right?
Right.
So I kind
And you can
of
speak the lingo.
exactly. That's the thing, right? Because I went from someone that always wanted to own one of these vehicles to being fortunate to own a vehicle. You know what I mean? That's an exotic. So I kind of being around so many of my clients for so long, I know what they're looking for.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, at this point, it's kind of like I do a render, I send them a message with that render, and they'll be like, "Oh my god!" Like I try to just blow them out of the water before we even start a conversation, right? Just give
Right,
them a
right.
That's a very interesting technique. Like, I wouldn't have thought that, because most entrepreneurs, they do the whole sales pitch, talk about what they have, then try and bring the customer to then see a bunch of products they may have. But this is the opposite strategy, which seems to have been worked for you, and it's made you this like well known and successful. Yeah.
No, definitely. It's like, well, I like to give you a bit of background on what I used to do. So, out of high school, so when I started designing clothes at 16, I was inspired a lot by Pharrell Williams. So
Hmm.
I collected his clothing, and I put together a lookbook. I used to model back in the day, just to kind of get a foot into the whole world of fashion. Because I would buy certain pieces, like a T-shirt, for example, and be like, well, I wish they made this T-shirt in red with gold writing, or I wish I did this,
Right.
black, white writing, right? So it was kind of just looking for certain outfits to wear, you know what I mean, for myself, and it sparked me kind of saying, okay, well, maybe I can, find out what the process is to make my own T-shirt. So, I used to do a lot of stuff like that, just fiddle around with certain things, just on a small personal level. It wasn't for anything for resale; it was just for me to do for myself. So it's, from there I went, I finished off high school. I did some heating and air conditioning course that I didn't really want to do. So I dropped out of that. I got my first part of it, but
Right.
there's like a two-part to get your license, right? So I dropped out of that. And then I went into selling cars. So my family's been around the automotive industry for quite some time. They owned a repair shop. And I used to be there as a kid. So going from there to selling cars, I learned a strategy of how to sell a product. And then I kind of put a twist on it when it comes to my own when it came to my own business. So I just figured a visual person, and a lot of these guys are.
Yeah.
And I figured if I had that advantage of showing something to someone that, like, it's kind of like almost dreamlike, right? Like same thing for me. If someone had showed me a visual of a T-shirt that I had in my mind, you know what I mean? It would blow me out of the water. So,
Mm-hmm.
showing these guys and using that approach, like, hey, this doesn't exist. I made this for you, and I give them that sense and that luxury of it being unique to them. Because, like, a lot of people pay a premium to have something that's one of one, right? And with
Yeah.
that, you have to be, willing to spend a lot of money, or you might have to be famous, right? Like a lot of celebrities get special gifts or one-off stuff from like big brands like Louis Vuitton or Gucci or whatnot. So you kind of give them that luxury, right? At like a decent price. Like my products are a luxury product, but compared to if a bigger brand was doing that for someone, it's a fraction of the cost,
Of course.
right? So I
Mm-hmm.
just figured that strategy of kind of rendering something and showing someone, it kind of came from me thinking of how to save money. Because what was initially happening when I started my company, I didn't own a supercar. I didn't even own a car. I was using, my mom and dad's vehicle, right? And the people that I knew that had decent cars, I would say, hey, I'm doing these bags. I'm using the same leather. I can make it look like the car. And they'd be like, well, why don't you give me one, and I can promote it. And that really didn't work out well for me because I wasn't really making a lot of money. I was still pretty young at the time. And I figured if at this rate, if I keep making this product and investing that time to just give to people with no return on my investment of my time or my money making the product, it's not going to really go too well for me. I'm not going to be able to get as far as I want to
Yeah.
go. So doing the Photoshop kind of saved out on that process, right? Like imagine I can render a bag in about 10 minutes opposed to making a bag, which would take me like a week, right?
Well, it's also like you're showing your potential customer something they need without them even knowing that they need it, right? Because they didn't know that there's a potential to get it. And then when they see it,
Exactly.
and now because you've customized it, personalized it to their colors, you're taking the cues, as you mentioned, from their vehicle, and it looks, mirrors their vehicle so closely. It's anything. If I'm gonna buy something and I can personalize it, I'm much rather or more likely to buy it versus
To spend, yeah.
exactly, and spend a little bit more money on it because it's unique to me, like you mentioned.
Of course, you put that into words a lot better than I did. That's why these meetings are crucial. That's why I like kind of interacting with different people. You know what I mean? Because you can pick up a thing or two as well, right? But yeah, essentially, and a much cleaner version of it. Yes, that's exactly what I try to give my customers.
So you had mentioned that this wasn't like the first business. There was another one prior to this, and you learned from that business in this. Is that correct?
Yeah, so that's the luggage business that I'm talking about.
Okay, okay,
Yeah.
So
okay. So,
that was the first business.
sorry, okay, sorry.
So
So then you learned from that to build also a second business that you're also running.
of course, yeah. So the business that I have now is Avon Noir clothing line that I'm doing, but a lot of stuff is going to transition from my first business into this
Right.
business. So I'm going to continue doing the car luggage. But my thing is, I'm just I want to put to like my whole what was it, motivation or goal for this company, sorry, was to create a collection which I designed entirely myself. So it wasn't
Nice.
based off the cues of what someone already owned,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
or like cars in general. I wanted to kind of
It
go
was your design.
yes, right. I kind of wanted to do that and go that route. So you know starting that first company, I still have it in place. It'll always be there as long as I can continue to run it, and I hope it continues to expand. But doing the Avant Noir stuff was kind of letting me loose on my own creative end. I wasn't confined to just vehicles, right? Like I can pick any theme that I want to go with, and there's a lot more opportunity to make something that's different than what's out there.
So talk to us
And
a little. Oh, sorry, Rashi, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, how did the name come about? Like, what made you think of Avon Noir? Like, how did that name came about?
So it's funny. With my first company, the name was the biggest thing I wanted to change. So I'll touch base on that for a second. So UAOP Luggage, or the name UAOP, was just an acronym. It used to be underaged overpaid, and that's what I
Nice.
had it as when I was in high school, right? So being in high school, I had underaged overpaid, and I was doing these logos on these T-shirts, and then I wasn't doing bags at the time. It was just clothing. And then I kind of sat there and, I did some stuff for celebrities, like Pharrell. I did some shirts for Jay-Z,
Nice.
Drake, early at the time. And, just little things like that. So I already had some sort of, that name kind of stuck with certain people. So that's how they kind of knew me. But then I figured I needed something that sounded more like mature, because I didn't like the sound of underaged overpaid like 2 years later. I was
Right.
kind of like, this kind of sounds corny. It seems like, one of those brands that are just going to be here and be gone. Like, I don't think someone that's, 40 or 30 years old is going to want to wear something that's called underaged overpaid. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
you
Like,
you outgrew the name a little bit from what I'm hearing.
exactly. Exactly. I thought of, just the benefits of having something that everyone can kind of wear, right? Because you reach more of a marketplace doing that. You get more customers. So I was never happy with the name. So I changed it to unique, ageless, opulent, powerful,
Hmm.
which is a better acronym, but still, like, for me, like, a lot of people will confuse UAOP luggage, and they'll pronounce it like how it's spelled, and they'll say like UOP. I'm like, well, there's
Mm.
dots between the letters,
Yeah,
so it's
yeah.
pronounced UAOP. And like, on the website, on the Instagram, I have the acronym for it. So I just felt like, at the time, I didn't want to have to rebuild that whole brand from, ground up, because so many people already knew the acronym UAOP. So I just figured if I changed it, it'd be a little more subtle, and, people wouldn't really look into it too much.
Hmm.
So the Avant Noir brand now was something I wanted to start a second brand, and I was thinking of rebranding UAOP Luggage. So the decision was made to just start a second company, and to make it like fashion based, so I struggled with the name for a long time because that was one of the mistakes I made early on. I didn't really think of a solid name that I wanted to keep. Um, so struggling with the name, I used Alexander the Great as inspiration for this company. So that's what the logo is.
Nice.
Um, it's as you know, it's the lion head. He was like the youngest king. He basically conquered pretty much most of the world at a very young age, right? So
Hmm.
we, using that whole story, I figured I want to conquer, the fashion industry. I want to conquer and plant my own flag with my brand. So I figured I related to that story a little bit. So that was half of the battle, and then once I kind of had a logo set up, I was thinking of different names. So I was juggling with Aventis. So there's a cologne company called Creed. Their best selling fragrance is called Aventis. So my dad got me this cologne when I was 25. It's pretty expensive, you know what I mean? But on the label, the marketing and the packaging is really nice,
Hmm.
and it says from father to son. So I looked up the name Aventis, and it meant successor. So I kind of wanted to tie in like a name where I could make a monogram like similar to like the Louis Vuitton monogram, like you got the LV. So I
Yep.
wanted to do like Alexander Aventis. So let's say if you were Googling it or if you were looking at it on a list and it was like alphabetical order, it would be on the top of
It'll
the
be the
list,
top. Yeah, yeah, smart.
Mm-hmm.
right? So the biggest thing was I got the Alexander part of it, and then the Aventis for me was like, okay, if I use this, I want to trademark this company. It might be a big battle with this fragrance company who's been around a lot longer than me. So I'm like, okay, well, maybe we'll look into the name. So I was just looking up different names like that started with A, and basically what I looked at was it kind of hit me that like he went forward and conquered all these places. So I'm like, so what's a word for forward? You know what I mean? What can we use? So when I came across the word avant, it means like to go forward, like you know what I mean, either it's directional or to walk forward in certain languages. So I figured,
Hmm.
okay, avant, so that means forward. And then noir came from my favorite color is black, but I looked at it as Alexander kind of went into the darkness. He was in the dark when he conquered all these countries, right? So I'm like, okay, perfect. Let's put a spin on black. Let's do noir. So that's where the name came from.
Wow, that's actually an incredible story just on its own. Just because the journey of your name has so many different stages and so many different like it's all in depth in terms of meaning to you. Like it all came from somewhere that meant something to you. It wasn't just like random names that you're
Mm-hmm.
choosing.
Of course, of course. And I figured that's something that for me, as a fan of a lot of different artists and designers, I always looked into their backstory, and that's what made me a fan of
Yeah,
them
yeah.
most. Because like anyone that's kind of come from like a struggle or that's kind of started from the ground up, I really respect those people because I feel like they can relate a lot to me. I can relate a lot to them, right?
Yeah, for sure, that's fair. Guys, let's take a quick break right here and then we're gonna be right back. All right, so we are back with Paul. So Paul's I guess, to a degree, a serial entrepreneur, but it's not multiple companies, but there's a couple, and you build out your brands sort of quite systematically. So it's a nice story to hear that the journey is part of the process for you. It's not just a means to an end. You're really focused on the journey, which is kind of nice to hear. So we're talking about Avante, right, Rashi?
Avon Noir. Say
Right.
it right. Say it right.
Hey, listen, someone's got to say it the non-French way so that the non-French people understand it too.
Well, talking about it, it's all that matters.
Exactly. So we were talking a little bit off camera about something that's happening in your world right now with that company is the whole trademark process. You're trademarking the brand and the name, and that's an interesting process that not many people talk about. But there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes to trademark. So talk to us about your experiences with that and what the process has been like.
Oh, definitely. So that's one thing I wanted to do second time around with this company. So I found that a lot of big brands trademark stuff just to protect
Yes,
their
absolutely.
intellectual properties because like you live in a world where people kind of can ambush you and take what creative process you've been through and use it as leverage or put themselves in a better position, right?
We see it every day.
Yes, of course. So that whole process for me was something completely new because I didn't really do it just because the cost involved in doing it, which I figured wasn't a big deal, but it's just more so time. So trademarking, I found a company in Hamilton that does it, and they've done a lot of
Right.
trade for bigger companies. And I was told right from the top the process would be 15 to I want to say 22 months, something like that, to
Okay.
to do a trademark just in Canada. And
So
then the
just
state,
shy of 2 years, pretty much.
yeah, and in the States, I think if you wanted to file at the same time, the States, I think, was a 12 to 15-month process. I could be mixing them up. I don't know if the States might take a little bit longer. I think it might be Canada, but it's a process and a half.
Hmm.
And I applied for this trademark the better part of almost 2 years ago. So I spoke to my lawyer actually today because I was wondering about it, and
Right.
whole COVID thing kind of threw a monkey wrench into this. So, January is when I was supposed to get the approval on it, and I was told today it might take up until September, right? Based off all the other trademarks they've been filing and not getting an answer for them. So it's a process. They basically search out all these different names and look through all these different companies just to verify that you're the one that actually owns that name.
So what would typically, I mean, okay, outside of the outlier, which is COVID, and a typical time frame, it's anywhere between 15, call it a year to 2 years, depending on the location and
Yeah.
the process time. Like, did they describe to you why it takes so long and what goes on in the process for that time?
So they told me the first part of that process is just the search. And they said it doesn't really
Mm-hmm.
take that long, but it's just that, like, for me, even when I was thinking of the name, I had to Google so many, like, from so many different sources to check and see if someone owned it. I didn't know
Yeah,
if someone owned
variations,
Avon.
yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know if someone already owned Avon Noir or what type of branding was already behind those two different names, right? I didn't want someone to think that, oh, this is another extension of a company that has nothing to do with what I'm doing.
Right, right, of
So
course.
what I was told initially was that the search process is a long one because they're basically doing, in a better version of what, just looking up these names and just seeing, what's attached to what. And they said the filing process after that is just a long wait just because there's so many different companies and people now applying for trademarks that their office gets pretty backed up. So it's basically, they could do the search within a couple months and then your form or file is just sitting on a desk for the better part of a year until, it
The
gets,
actual filing.
yeah, right. So I was told that the filing part was done. They're just waiting for an approval. So basically, what happens is they're just waiting for the stamp to say, yeah, this is an approved trademark, or they examine it because they have reason to, and they might ask you to make a change to something. It could be just it could be even as simple as what category you're filing under. And I filed under a lot of categories, so that just could be that as well.
Yeah, I was going to actually ask you, that was my follow-up question, that I think, when it comes to trademarks and or patent, you know, simple variations of the way maybe even you spell the word could
Yes.
could affect that trademark. So if you are Noir comes out and puts, just to be fancy and mess with you, Noire,
Yeah.
technically, they're not in breach of your trademark, depending on how you position it, if I understand correctly.
Yes, that's exactly it. Like even with me, it was very hard to come to an agreement as far as which way I wanted to spell noir because
Right.
as you know, you can put an e at the end of it. Um, and I figured, okay, well, I'll use the masculine version, I guess, without the e.
Right.
Because the logo represented some, Alexander the Great, which was a masculine,
Yeah. Yeah.
type of character,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's why I went that way. But there was a couple companies just searching. It was like Avant Garde.
Yes.
They do a lot of car products. My friend in California owns Avant Garde Exotics. You know what I mean? So it's just little things. Like we filed under fashion, car products, just in case I want to branch off and, incorporate some of the UAOP
Right,
products.
of course, of course.
Right? So,
Mhm.
we had to file under so many different categories. I even took it upon myself to file under a fragrance category.
Gotcha.
I don't know if that's in the works later on, right? So,
Yeah.
it's just you have to be very careful. It's just a process, you know what I mean? Because you don't want to like not take the opportunity to file in different categories, even though you may or may not get into that category. You just
Yeah.
don't know how your business is gonna scale, right? So you just want to make sure that you kind of have everything covered.
It's also tough because, like, at what point do you think, well, this is enough categories, or where do you at what point are you like, well, am I actually like covering all the categories I want? Am I missing anything here? Like, it's also tough mentally to say, because once you start going through that process and you start naming off categories, I mean, the list can technically be endless.
No, exactly, and that's one of the reasons why with this second company I've been taking my time to
Right.
actually get everything together, because I felt like I wanted to run with the first company. I felt like I had a vision and a dream and a goal, and I wanted to get there without any delay, and I did do that. But now my visions and goals have changed. Like I looked at something that felt so far, I got there so quickly. I feel like now, okay, I made it to you know I made it to the lighthouse, maybe I can go to the moon, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So
of course, of course.
that's the way I kind of look at that. So I figured, okay, well, I didn't prepare myself for that trip, and I came across X, Y, and Z problems. So you know what? Let's focus on getting the right tools to go a much further distance.
So with Avon Noir, what's the time frame that you're anticipating for the product and or series to launch?
So as everyone has been saying, this whole year, COVID's been a big
Absolutely.
player
Mhm.
delaying. But typically, what I'm waiting for, obviously, to get that trademark
Yeah, of course.
100% finalized. That's the main thing. I don't see that being an issue. I'm gonna knock on wood for that. But
Yes.
what I want to do is I want to put together two collections. I want to also have a fashion show. So my plan was to do that this year, but that was last year's kind of goal. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna say, as soon as COVID kind of slows down and we get back to normal, where we can be in like larger groups, right? I want to do a fashion show, because I feel like that's the way I want to roll out the company. So I'm looking at the time from the next 1 to 2 years. I'm working official thing, and I want to this time around. I actually want to have proper packaging for products. I want to create an experience that's top tier for my clients. I want them to think that this company has been around for a very long time, and I want to use the knowledge and the lessons that I've learned, right? And as far as overall quality and making a good solid company, I want to apply that to this company. So I just want to make everything like seamless.
So just quickly for the benefit of our listeners, can you share what those products are and what it is that people should
Mhm.
be expecting?
So the Avon Noir company is going to be clothing. So we want to do T-shirts, sweaters. It's going to be like streetwear
Nice.
fashion that we're going to do. But I also want to do some like collaborations, do some couture type of fashion. We want to do leather goods because we're deeply rooted in that.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
and
we
you have
want
a
to
Mhm.
bit of
kind
a
of
business, yeah.
incorporate all the products that we have made before that have been so successful and put our a new spin on them, and just have them accessible to people that may not own a nice car, but you know just have a really good taste in fashion, right?
So do you see crossover between the two businesses outside of obviously some of the raw materials, but in terms of the
Sorry,
market?
you cut out when you asked me that.
Do you see crossover between the two businesses in terms of the market itself? No, I don't, not the raw material, because obviously some of the leathers and things will you'll have the
Mhm.
suppliers, but on the customer side.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like my first company, we used carbon fiber. So the basis around that first company was we were the first company to actually make a carbon resin bag.
Oh wow, nice.
Whereas companies use carbon fiber cloth before, but we actually resonated the carbon. And by resonating, it means like when you see carbon fiber, it's just a cloth, similar to fiberglass. When you use resin, you basically use like this glue or like clear coat, and it impregnates the carbon fiber. It gets baked in an oven, and it turns out to be a solid part. Now, carbon fiber is stronger than steel when it's cured the right way, and it's like maybe 10% of the weight, and that's why they're used in these
Hmm.
cars. So, we used this product in this material in ways that it's never been done before. So I feel like there's going to be a good cross of that, because carbon fiber is the new black, as
Gotcha,
far as
gotcha.
what a lot of guys are looking at,
Mhm.
fashion world, and I just feel like we want to stay true to that. So there will be a crossover of certain products, just with a different spin on it. But using those materials, we will definitely cross over. And I feel like a lot of customers that I have now are excited to see, what's to come. Because now it's like I'm not limited to just cars. I can use my imagination and come up with different ways to use different materials, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So I understand also that you've been teasing some product online prior to it actually being released and sharing some of the concepts. So talk to us about what you're doing to build the awareness for the brand.
So what I've been doing is, well, the COVID thing kind of helped, me in a strange, weird way. I'm sure it's helped a lot of other people in the sense of, using their time and kind of sitting back and you know, just examining what they could do better, right? Or how they could roll out a product differently. So for me, it's kind of like put pause on the whole world. So it's like, everyone was in the same boat,
Absolutely,
just
yeah, yeah.
developing different products.
Mhm.
So what I did was, to kind of create awareness, I went into making face masks, because
Right.
technically, I was a non-essential business. So what I did was I made some Avon Noir face masks. I packaged them all up, you know what I mean? And I put them on Instagram. And, I sold the better part of almost 1,000 masks within a short period of time.
Wow.
And that's how I kind of got awareness of, people taking selfies of the mask, so they saw the name.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and then from and then from there, I was just teasing prototypes of T-shirts. Like the one I have on now is just something I did for myself. But like I like to test out different prototypes and just wear them myself, make them, and see what I can improve on, how I like a logo, how I don't like a logo. So a lot of times, like I'll post certain things on Instagram just to get people's feedback, and it's been pretty
Yeah,
good.
yeah,
It always ends up with someone asking, "Where's mine at?" So,
yeah, yeah.
so that's a positive sign.
Well, it's a good
And
way.
and and
Yeah,
just
no,
to
go
mention,
ahead.
sorry, and just to mention, I've personally seen those masks because I met Paul at a shoot, and I've personally seen those masks and the packaging, and I have to say they're actually really, really, really beautiful. Like, I was like, okay, this is
No,
gorgeous. I can see why it's like, you know, like
I,
like a
I
hit. Yeah.
I appreciate that, and you guys were nice enough to set up that whole shoot, and I had a great time. But I'm glad that I get really positive feedback from people that I've never met or I've met the first time. You know what I mean? It keeps me on track to know that I'm doing something right. So I really appreciate that.
That was a fun day. It was a bit crazy, and I know I was like running all over the place without breathing, but it was a fun day.
It was a fun day. You girls killed it, and I know that you guys were trying to make everything work and make everything happen in the time that you guys had. So for what you guys did, you guys nailed it. So I'm definitely happy to be a part of that.
Working in
Thank you for being part of it.
a
Yeah.
crazy environment is Rashi's specialty. She knows how to manage it, so we got to give her that
Oh
credit.
yeah, definitely. She was doing a million and one things on the go. Like she was there. She's like, hey, we're gonna do this podcast. I want you on it. I'm like, okay, I'm down. You know what I mean? And she already had it fucked up. Listen, I'm gonna contact you. I'm gonna reach out to you, and she was already ready to go. And then while she's doing this, she's focusing on her next shot she has to take. So it was nice to see that.
Yeah, yeah, she's definitely in the war zone. She's on the battlefield to win.
Oh yeah, definitely,
I like I like
definitely.
the I like the idea that you mentioned about sort of testing out the materials, sorry, not the materials, but the product in different forms on your own right now, especially given the time because you have the ability to do that with this time because your product's not launching immediately. You have some time to test the
Yeah.
market, and whether it's through internet or even using it on your own, sort of personal in your own personal network, wearing different styles of the logo, different styles of the different t-shirts that you have in your mind, and getting that feedback. It must go a long way in terms of just that close one-to-one market research.
Oh, definitely, because what a lot of people don't understand is when you to start a clothing line or a brand, there's so much money involved in it.
Yeah.
And often what happens is people don't think when you do a specific SKU like a t-shirt, you have to make, a small, medium, large, extra large, and
Yes.
just one t-shirt. Now the cost depends on how much you want to sell these t-shirts for, or what, quality or material. If you're getting something custom made to your specs, you have to order like the better part of like minimum 10 to like 20, 30, 40, 50,000 pieces
Yeah. Yeah.
in
Yeah.
one size, in
Yeah.
one color. So, it's big money, right? And for a
Absolutely.
lot of people starting out, they don't have it like that to do that. And, if you do, you don't want to do a design and basically, apply it to X amount of pieces. And then it's like, oh, I could have done this a little bit better. Or, oh,
Exactly.
I wish this was like that. Because it's a very expensive mistake. You might not
Absolutely.
sell all those pieces because of that. You know what I mean? So that's why I like prototyping. So what I'll do is I'll sit and I'll design different ways, even if it's something that's not my vibe or something that I really wouldn't normally do. I do it anyway, just to kind of see and experiment how something would look. So the cool thing is the research part of it. I'll wear my own stuff. I go out as much as I can and I try to promote my company as much as I can. And anytime I step out of the house or if I'm going into a meeting, if I'm wearing my own personal clothing, I always get stopped by people. They'll ask me, "Hey, where'd you
Right.
get that from?
Well,
Hey,
yeah.
that
Yeah.
logo looks great." So it's just very nice to kind of have that feedback, right? And it's just something that you can't really put a price on that because it's like right there. You're basically communicating with your target market, right?
Do you design a lot of your own stuff, just personally yourself, or do you work with like a graphic design team to do it?
So I basically design everything myself. My dad owns a sign company, so my dad's pretty
Nice.
artistic. Um, so being around him, I learned the use of all these different programs as I was growing up. So, graphic design has been in my skill set for quite some time. So, I designed that Avon Noir logo. I render up all these pieces. So it just goes hand in hand. So, and then, because I didn't have the means to hire someone to stitch or someone to graphic design for me or someone to market, I had to learn these things myself
Right.
and
Mm-hmm.
make them tools where I know if I hire someone, this is what I'm looking for. You know what I mean? So I had to just really make these these tools as sharp as I can. So I try to do as much as I can myself because I can oversee the process and
Right.
I
Of
know
course.
that
Of
I'm
course.
100% happy with it. And I think there's not a lot of people in this day and age that have that skill set. Either someone's a great designer in the sense that they can graphic design really well and they can't stitch, or someone's a great graphic designer but they can't put a piece together. You know what I mean? So it's nice to kind of have the best of all of these worlds and to kind of interchange in between the skill set, right?
Yeah, I think that part's really important because a lot of time, like yes, there's something to be said about outsourcing and depend and taking, someone else's expertise and using that to build for yourself. But having that ability to be able to do that in-house yourself so you can take a design, even if you see like a concept you like and you want to work with it a little bit, you can still go in and make those changes and amendments and mess around with it to give that look, that your look you want, right? We talk about, for example, like even smaller boutique clothing stores. If they have, for example, an in-house tailor for small little changes or amendments when a final product comes in, if it needs to be altered slightly, it's important to have that skill set in-house and being able to do that yourself without the dependence on anybody else. Just plateaus you further. If something
Mm-hmm.
comes up, it's like you can just jump on your computer and be like, I don't like this. I'm going to change the color. I'm going to change the font this way, or I'm going to do whatever it is that you feel needs to be adjusted, and you have the skill set to do that. So I think that's very important as an entrepreneur in that specific field.
Definitely. And for me, I'm very thankful to have gotten this far. But one thing I owe any sort of success that I've had up until this point is that I was willing to learn something that I didn't know, that
Yes.
I needed, that was an essential skill, and make it a strong point. So, like, as far as photoshopping something goes, 10 years ago, I didn't know how to use the program.
Yeah.
I'm completely honest. My brother-in-law kind of taught me my way around that program. Now it's like I didn't go to school for it. I didn't go on any courses. I do brush up as much as I can as
Sure.
updates come out, and I go online and I take tutorials on certain things. But there's people that have been doing graphic design for the better part of 10, 15 years on this program, and they still don't know how to do what I can do. You know what
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
Just
That's
because I
incredible.
push myself every day, you know what I mean, to get better at something. And it's the same with sewing. Like, when I first started, I was heat pressing T-shirts and a lot of the machinery, like vinyl cutting, the plotter is what that tool is called. My dad has that machine. So I grew up, making stickers for my bike or my room and stuff like
Nice.
that.
Mm-hmm.
So I already know how to use those programs and how to use those tools and how to apply stickers. And it was the same thing. It was an easy transition from going from that to making t-shirts because the process is pretty similar. You're using a lot of the same programs and you're using a lot of the same techniques, right? So, I had that skill going for me. And then, I just added to my skill set. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. Like, it's good to be well-rounded. I feel like in this day and age, if you want to really succeed and you're starting a business, you should know your business,
Absolutely.
top to bottom.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I just feel like a lot of people, that's why a lot of people fail because, they're oblivious to a different aspect of the business. For me, I'm glad my skills are well-rounded in the sense of creating something and bringing something to life. What I'm trying to do is make my skill set as a businessman my strong point now. You know what I mean? Because I feel like
Absolutely.
I've mastered these other things, and that's the next step for me. So that's why I said, there's a lot of things I wanted to change because as I've gotten more mature, being a business operator, I can definitely see things I could have done differently initially with the first company.
And I think that's where the growth comes in, right? Like the growth and the experience kicks in. You I think that as you're starting off, when especially at a younger age, a lot of it is hopes and dreams, right? It's like, well, I can do this because it's that inner youth that is you can do anything, right? But as you
Of
learn
course.
how to get it done, that's a whole different story because the work that goes behind it is not easy.
No, it's not easy. And to be totally honest, like for me, I speak into the universe a lot, right?
Mm,
And there's certain things that people they don't understand. It's hard to put it in words. Like I feel like being on this podcast and speaking to people that are like-minded, or you guys being in the industries that you're in, you see people that have a
right,
similar mindset.
right.
So
Mm-hmm.
when I say speak into the universe, like you know I was maybe 5 years old, and that's when I first saw a model car of a Lamborghini. And since the age of 5, you could ask my teachers, you could ask my friends, you could ask my parents. Like that was one of my goals. Everyone knew me for that. So I bought the car when I was 25.
Right.
Actually, I've had the pleasure of owning two, but it was speaking into the universe for that long. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
And it was like I went from, I'm being honest, when I started in 2010, I was still working at the car dealership, and my boss told me, "Hey, you got to choose. Do you want to do this bag stuff in your office? You know what I mean? Because I was rendering stuff in between talking to clients, or do you want to sell cars,
Yeah.
right?"
Yeah.
And I had to quit. I literally said, "Hey, if you guys are going to stop me, from doing something creative while I'm on my break, you know what I mean? Then this
Yeah.
is not the right place for me." It was a great job to have because it opened up my confidence to speak and sell a product. I gained knowledge from that, but in the same sense of it too, it was definitely something that pushed me out of that industry because I wanted to go forth with my dreams, right? So
Absolutely.
working hard and like I said, speaking into the universe. I've always, anything that I've done prior, like a lot of people will go on my
Mm-hmm.
Instagram. I've done stuff with certain celebrities, or I've had certain experiences. And they say, "How did you do that? How did you do that?" Well, I speak into the universe. Like I give you an example. Like I did stuff for Floyd Mayweather. I was watching. It was about 3 or 4 fights ago. It's probably 2000 and I want to say 16. He had a fight, and I was just sitting on my couch. My mom and dad were there, and I said, "Hey, I'm gonna do a set of luggage for Floyd. I want to do that for him one day." And a week later, speaking into the universe, that opportunity kind of fell into my lap,
It's
right?
incredible.
So you just got to push. But I felt like after saying that and speaking into the universe, my mindset was already there. So I took the necessary steps for that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Of
So you
course.
got to kind of hold yourself accountable for what you say, because if you're gonna put negativity out there and you're gonna feel like, hey, I can't do it, or this is too hard, then there's a good chance you're not gonna do it. You know what I mean? But if you stay optimistic, and you just work and you just continue to push forward and believe in yourself, you can accomplish anything. But with that being said, too, sometimes you get brought back into reality, because some people, their dream is, I want to be the richest person in the world, but they don't know how they're going to do that. That's
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah.
so
And I
you
and,
kind of
and I and I think you touched on, something that, I mean, now I find people are getting more and more aware of, and I think, COVID had what did play a huge role on people taking that step back and turning into phrases. I mean, and I hate saying the word phrases, because I do believe in the whole speaking into the universe concept, and it's worked wonders for me personally as well. But I feel that now people are, using those words like manifestation, this and that. But to your point, it's more than just speaking it out loud. It's having that faith, it's having that belief in yourself, but it's also being as specific as possible, and then taking those like inspired actions to do what you say that you want to do. Like, I can sit here and say, like, I want to be the best stylist in the world, and style all over the globe in fashion shows. But if I'm sitting at home and not even trying to send emails or trying to build my portfolio or do shoots, or talk to people like you and like others, no one will know what I do. So how would I get that from the universe? So I think that's the how that people miss when they hear that, oh, I spoke into the universe and it fell into my lap. But that faith and that how and that taking those actions, which you've done, they don't kind of like realize that.
No, definitely, and that's exactly it. Like, but one thing I learned too is timing. Like, for anyone that's seen my journey or anyone that's close to me, they know that you have your ups and downs. Like, don't get me wrong. There's
Mm-hmm.
days, you know, that I have where, I want to sleep in all day. I feel like, okay, I've done this, this, and this. I'm trying to get to the next step. Well, how do I get to the next step? And I hit like a roadblock. Or on a creative perspective, a lot of people can relate to this. You get like creative block, right? So you're trying to think of something new, something innovative, and often people will mistake it for like you being lazy or not doing anything. Like, I'll give you a perfect example. Like, I have two Instagram accounts, right? So I got my business one and I got my personal one. So my personal one, I don't like adding any clients on it, right? I have my business one. You don't see my face. You don't tie nothing together, because I feel like, a lot of times if I'm just hanging out or I need a minute, like, clients are always wanting their product yesterday, right?
Yes,
Like, I give
yes.
them.
Mm-hmm.
So if they follow me on my personal and my business, sometimes people will see me on my personal account and I may just be, sitting there drawing something, or I may be, let's say, for example, going playing a video game, which I really don't do often. You know what I mean? I don't remember the last time I played PlayStation, but um, or going for a cruise, or just doing something different, something fun. People will often take it as, hey, well, he's not really working on this. He's just sitting there doing something else. Like, that's not the case. I feel like I can't stress this enough to anyone that's creative. You have to always push forward, but in the same sense too, you know, it's not, you shouldn't make yourself feel guilty for taking a break, and
Mm-hmm.
stimulating your mind in a different way. And I feel like people get tired of their like goals, the same sense. And sometimes you need to step back and reassess where you're going and not be so hard on yourself, because speaking into the universe and putting the hard work in is great, and that's a major key. But like I said, sometimes you have to just make little changes to give yourself a break too. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves as human beings to strive and to do well, but we forget to enjoy life, you know what I mean, too, which is a big part of it, right?
Well, it's the equal part of that growth.
That's very true.
Yeah. So I'm gonna ask you a question now. So talking about speaking into the universe, what's
Sure.
who's next on your hit list? Who'd you want to work with that you haven't yet? That's someone that's you're like, I got to go work with this person.
It's hard, you know what, like I think I only have one. I was speaking to my team about this, and well, my family's my team. But at this point in the game, I've kind of done like I have my own personal list. So like if you go
Yep.
on my Instagram, you'll see all the celebrities and all the collaborations I've done. And being 100% honest, like I'm happy with that list of
Yeah.
people that I've done stuff for. Now I just want to cater to my customers and make my own mark. But like for me, someone that's alive to do something for, it would probably the last person. Well, not the last person, but someone I would like would be like Cristiano Ronaldo,
Nice.
right? Someone that's not here would obviously be like Michael Jackson. You know what I mean?
Right.
But that's pretty much it. Like, I did, I just recently, I said I did, Floyd Mayweather stuff. I've done a lot of rappers that I look up to. I've done certain things for different companies and different brands that I love, right? So it's like,
Right.
you check off a lot of boxes because I've
Absolutely.
been in the game
Absolutely.
long, right? But as far as, doing something for someone or who's next, that would be a nice, that would be a
Hmm.
nice accomplishment to get him.
Well, it's in the universe now, so I think hopefully by the next time we have you on our show, that'll
Yeah,
be something that you'll
definitely.
be done.
Yeah, you guys can cross reference this too, and I can be like, see, I told you it works. I told you,
100%,
right?
There you
100%.
go. Absolutely.
And we
Now you
believe
guys may
in
be accountable for this. Like,
that's
so it
it, man.
wasn't on my mind. It wasn't
Now
on
it
my
is.
mind this morning. It was on my mind a couple of weeks ago. So now you guys put it back in my mind. So, I'll
There you
work on
go.
that.
Everything
Definitely.
gets aligned somehow, some way. You just never know how it comes back to you.
No, definitely, definitely.
So, Paul, where can people get you online? Where do they find you? Instagram pages, websites, all the socials. Where can we get you online?
So Instagram, I stay on Instagram. So it's P underscore the designer is my personal one, but I do post a lot of like teasers. People get to see my day to day stuff that I do. I try to tie in a lot of things I'm passionate about. Like I'll post pictures of cars or car meets, or if
Hmm.
I'm cruising, or like even like health stuff, or like jewelry, food, clothing, shoes. I try to do that on my personal. My business one, it's I haven't opened the Instagram account up yet to people seeing content just because I'm still creating content. Is
Hmm.
Avon Noir, all one word. And then for the luggage stuff, it's UAOP underscore luggage.
Perfect.
And you guys can see a whole bunch of crazy pieces. Anything that you see on my Instagram, especially on those three accounts, are pieces that I've actually made from scratch myself. So there's a lot of
Okay.
content on the UALP stuff. You guys can kind of get a better look of what I do and what I was talking about earlier on the podcast.
Yeah, we'll drop all the handles in the description underneath as well. So for those that are looking to, they can click right on it directly.
No, definitely, I
That's
appreciate it.
amazing.
Paul, that's incredible, man. Thank you for sharing your story with us. We're going to hopefully have you back on uh, later with Christian Ronaldo as
Yeah,
to hear
definitely.
the path to that. But definitely, would love to have your story's awesome. Great to hear an inspiring story like that of someone who actually just you have the skill set yourself and you went after it and you got it. Yes, speaking to the universe is a thing. I'm fully as that, but that also just doesn't happen by luck. It doesn't happen on its own. There's a lot of work that goes on behind that. And speaking into the universe, I think, like you mentioned, it's almost like you putting yourself uh, to a sense of accountability to making
Definitely.
that
Hmm.
come true. So good on you, and thank you for sharing.
No, like I said, I appreciate you guys having me on. Like I said, I haven't done a podcast. You know what I mean? So like I said, it's just another learning experience and a tool for me. You know what I mean? So I
You
tend
were
to
great.
I tend to ramble on sometimes. When you guys have to answer a question, ask me a question, because I like to give the full depth of it. Because I
Absolutely,
find like sometimes a generic answer is cool and all, but sometimes there's that odd listener like myself when I look at an interview with somebody. I'm like, okay, well, how'd they really come up with that? You know
exactly,
what I mean?
exactly.
Hmm.
Try to, I try to give as much information as I can, just because I feel like it's going to be, the spark of something, or the start for something for someone that's going to pick up on it. You know what I mean? And that might be the thing they need to hear. So I like to
Exactly.
drop as much as I can.
No, which is perfect, man. Thank you for sharing it in detail. That's the most important part.
I appreciate that. I appreciate you guys having me on this too.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much for being here, and thank you to all our listeners. for listening to our wonderful podcast today. And I'm totally stealing, my co-host's line
Perfect.
here. But until next week, have a great week, and stick around for Elevated Grapes.
Cheers,
Bye.
guys. Hey guys, thank you for watching that podcast or that video. If you like what you hear and you want to hear more of us and see some of our behind the scenes stuff, subscribe below.
Yes, hit that little red, button thingy that's over there and hit subscribe and keep following us for a lot more cool, fun stuff.
Thanks again for tuning in. We'll see you soon.